Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners. This episode of Word Balloon is brought to you by AlexRossArt.com. Coming up in the later part of the summer or early fall, from Abrams and Marvel, it's Fantastic Four, Full Circle, written and illustrated by Alex Ross. It's a rainy night in Manhattan. Not a creature is stirring except for the Thing, Ben Grimm. When an intruder suddenly appears inside the Baxter Building, the Fantastic Four find themselves surrounded by a swarm of invading parasites. These creatures, composed of negative energy, come to Earth using a human host as a delivery system, but why? Fantastic Four has no choice but to journey into the negative zone. Great story, great creator, as you know, Alex Ross. Really excited for this project. He's been working on it for a really long time. And man, you are in for some spectacular images. And if you want to get a preview for this, all you need to do is go to Alex's website, AlexRossArt.com. It's there also, as always, amazing paintings, sketches, lithographs, posters, every price point, epic images. You know the name. Check it out, AlexRossArt.com.
Now you guys too can have this conversation with the fantastic John Romita Jr. Well, have to make sense. No. No. Wow, man. I honestly, I assumed that at some point things would end with DC and you would be back in Marvel. But I'm really glad, you and Zeb doing a great job.
Zeb is, I told him this in an email that he's challenging, but it's not a bad challenge. It would be boring had he not been challenging. He asks in a microcosm. I'll give you an example. Everything happens at 11:59 on New Year's Eve in Times Square, with both groups of villains and good guys fighting at the same time. Panel 2. You know. He's a brilliant writer, and he's challenging, and that's the best thing about it, because then I don't tend to do the same old garbage that I've done in the past. And that's the great thing about working with a young guy. And unfortunately, I'm older than all the writers I work with. I can't do anything about that.
That's all right.
So they bow, they say, oh no, we think you're experienced. So they give me latitude, and they let me play with the story, and that's the best thing about it.
That's great, John. And truly, I mean, that's the thing, and it's always been your style, that you really brought a different voice. And especially, I mean, your dad became the house style. And a lot of followers, I think, tried to emulate your father.
It started off, if I'm wrong. Yeah, but it started off up here looking like Romita Sr., and by the time it got out here, it was, shit, Romita.
No.
He was a brilliant artist above and beyond what I could do as a cartoonist. He was an established, theatrical artist, so to speak, and he made money as a cartoonist, and that's why he went in that direction. But he's a classically trained artist. He's brilliant. He did things at 16 and 17 I can't do now. And I said to this couple of people today, he's LeBron James and I'm the water boy.
Shut up.
It's a true story.
John, though, it's really been great that in these decades since you debuted that, I mean, really, man, no, forgive me for still putting the junior on you and everything, and I know some people still bill you as junior, but I mean, yeah, again, generationally, it's like, it was your father than you, but it's true, man. I mean, unlike Jack Nicklaus Jr. or, think of your favorite baseball athlete or whatever, whose son may try to play or whatever, I mean, it is so great that your style it seemed to me that it was initially accepted. Am I wrong? Was there all right, this guy's got the name, but what the hell is he drawing?
It's slightly wrong in that what I did at the time was not liked because nobody liked me because I was my father's son.
I understand. And also Virginia signing the checks, comptroller.
But she didn't come in until years later.
Oh, okay.
And then when they both were working for the company and I was working for the company, I didn't go into the office. Because if I hit everybody that deserved to be hit over that, I would still be in jail. I swear to God. I got treated like dog dirt. And my father used to say to me, and a lot of fathers will say this, shut your mouth, do your job, and prove them wrong. And keep your hands in your pocket, he told me. But I was called junior derisively by the veteran artists when I went up to visit as a kid. You know, in summertime when it was raining, nothing to do, go up and hang out with Dad. And they'd say, yeah, Junior, right, go get me a cup of coffee. And then because of the initials being JR, that stuck. But I'm not literally a junior. However, figuratively, artistically, I am a junior to him. And I'll always, he actually said it in a clear moment. He said, I may be a more accomplished artist overall than you, but you're a better comic book artist than I ever will be.
Interesting.
That's what he said. I don't know how true that is. I appreciated it. Then I said, really? Overall, you're a better artist than me? But he did things. I don't know if anybody is familiar with the Women's Army Corps recruiting poster back with, for the Korean War. It was the female version of I Want You, Uncle Sam's Funeral. Yeah. It's in the Smithsonian.
Wow.
He did that at 19, and it's brilliant. I couldn't come close to that now.
I understand.
That shows you the kind of, and he did things in Central, not Central Park, Bryant Park in New York, near his school. He'd go out to lunch. Instead of eating lunch, he would draw the ladies of leisure. He would draw the bums, charcoals. Wow. I have those portfolios.
Wow.
You cannot believe what he was doing at 15 and 16. It's stunning.
John, you got to make a book of that stuff.
I have to.
You really do.
And he just, I had nothing better to do. Oh, God. He did, I'm sorry to brag about this man so much, but he's
thrilled that you're talking about your dad.
He's 92 and he doesn't talk about himself. And if he doesn't have an ego, then I shouldn't have an ego either. He did a sewer cap to sewer cap image of the Statue of Liberty with chalk from a destroyed building, sheetrock.
Okay.
And he drew up and down the street, and it lasted until it rained.
Sure.
Somebody had a photograph of it, and I don't know where it is. But that's the kind of guy he was, and the kind of artist he was, and people acknowledged how great he was. And a lot of guys his age were professionally, and they were educated that way, classically trained.
Yes, absolutely.
And they became cartoonists as depression babies, if everyone knows what that expression is, to put food on the table. It was the fastest way of making money. And all of them used to discuss it, and he never thought of it as something to be proud of. It was just a job to him.
Sure, and truly, that's what I love about the Golden Age and Silver Age guys.
There you go.
And yeah, they couldn't get into slicks, the Vogue and Life and whatever, Saturday Evening Post, so they were doing comics. Well, let me bring it back to you because.
Do we have to?
No. Oh, and I might embarrass you. And also, Michael Gray is here, the guy who played Billy Batson in the 70s as Shazam. There is a Canadian-made, and Johnny, I never talked to you about this, but I'm interested if you know. There was this 1978 or 79 Canadian comic book documentary where they went to the offices of DC and Marvel, and I'm going to have to send you the links to the video. It's on YouTube.
Oh, God.
But it really was like...
Did I have a mullet then?
You did not have the mullet.
I had the good mullet. Just so you know, better than all the wrestlers and all that, mine was the best.
I understand. But you looked like Michael Gray when he was a kid. And you were a kid, so it's okay. But it was great because it was you if it really was the Bullpen or whatever. I wish I could remember specifically what we were doing. And one person I asked, maybe it was Frank Giacoya that was also in this thing, but Archie is in there, Archie Goodwin with Stan, and they're doing a story session about the human fly character.
Okay.
And it's amazing. But it's somebody over your shoulder guiding you on some art and stuff. And I don't know if you remember shooting this.
Vaguely.
Okay,
Vaguely.
All right. But yeah, I mean, literally, it's been like,
God.
I've been like Columbo with like a film, like, who's this, sir? Is that you? So yeah, for real. So anyway. Yeah, well, when do you feel like you weren't just junior and, nobody's laughing anymore, to put it in that parlance?
It hasn't. And it's self-imposed.
Come on. Well, yeah, but listen,
this is the good thing. Listen, there's two ways of looking at this. You can say I'm better than all of those guys, or you could realize there's always, and he said this, my father said this to me, in just one of those brilliant conversations with his son. He said, there's always somebody bigger, better, stronger, smarter, better look. All right, not better look.
Not better looking, Johnny. Don't kid yourself.
But he said, if you deal with that as a reality, you'll always strive to get better. And he's right. Of course he's right. And this is without a degree in psychology. So it was always self-imposed that I still have this brilliant artist above me. And then I came into the industry at a time when there were guys that were better than me. And you can't argue with it. if you deal with it as a bar that you have to reach to get better, and you'll always get better, then you will always get better. And there are guys that are my age that thought they were the best things, and they never improved because they just thought they were that great. And I never had the confidence that way. And it was always striving to get better. And and listen, I still see guys doing stuff better than me, and I'm always working at it.
That's great. Well, that's what keeps you sharp. That's fantastic, man.
All right, fair enough.
You know, I'm sure you all have questions, and I feel terrible that we didn't realize John was waiting in the wings. So, sir, let me start with you.
What's your favorite character to draw?
My favorite character to draw is Daredevil. Yes. Love that character. And there's more than just the simplicity of the costume. The story goes, no, I was there. I was 6 or 7, and there were monsters all over my room that night. And they came out from underneath the bed, and they were going to kill me. So I ran. I don't know if anybody's from New York, but the Queens, the attics, you pull down the ladder, and it folds down. My father was up there. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. And I go running up the stairs crying, and he's working. He says, like this, come on in, sit down. And I had a little spot there because the monsters were always in the room. And he's working on Daredevil number 12, the cover of Daredevil number 12, with Kazar up in the tree and the Plunderer's men around Daredevil. And he says, come here and sit down. And he's working. And he had been working on romance novels.
Great stuff.
So my brother and I only saw people necking on the stuff he was drawing. And it was nothing to look at. It was boring. Now, as brilliant as an artist as he is, it was still nothing. So I came up, and that was the first time. And at the barber shop, there were all sorts of comic books on the floor that we would look at and wish Dad would draw that stuff and so on. So I went up there, and he's working on that cover. And I said, Dad, what is this? And he proceeded to explain that these are the bad guys. This is Tarzan up in the tree, because at that time I didn't know who Kazar was.
Sure.
And he explains that these are bad guys. That's the Plunderer. And he's a bad guy. And all these other bad guys are surrounding Daredevil. And he's a superhero. Wow, what's a superhero? He explains he's got powers that nobody else does, etc. He got radiated and so on. Oh, and by the way, he's blind. And I think the top of my head exploded.
I'm hip.
Oh my God. And I claim to this day that's what locked me into wanting to pay attention to and become a cartoonist. Now, I have that original cover. Wow. And I've been offered stupid money for it, and I don't think I could ever get rid of it. However, if anything goes wrong, I'll get rid of it. But that moment on, it was suddenly, that directed me, because he said that I started drawing on the floor, right there with him.
Wow.
And the monsters went away. It was
wow.
Great. Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, Johnny, that is true.
So Daredevil, for more than the funness of drawing this simple costume, it's a lot of guys say that between that and Batman, it's the external image of Batman with the ears and the cape. With Daredevil, it's the D and the D and the pointy horns. There's something about the simplicity of the costume, and I think that does it. And it's a very graceful character. But to me, with him doing that cover, I'll never, ever forget that. And he gave it to me. He may have forgotten he gave it to me, but he gave it to me.
That's awesome. Who else? Sir.
Hey, John, big fan of the Hobgoblin, but I don't want to talk about the past. I want to talk about the future. So we have a Hobgoblin story.
Hobgoblin, okay. By the way, I ripped off the Green Goblin. Complete rip-off of the Green Goblin. Do not be impressed. I turned back the money I got on the royalties because I was so embarrassed. I said, I'll give it to Steve Ditko, but he had passed already. So, okay, all right.
So you get to draw Norman Osborn and this new Hobgoblin coming out in the Amazing Spider-Man #7. What can you tell us about this story?
That I despise drawing Norman Osborn's hair.
It is gross.
You have no idea. Ask Scott Hanna, who works with me on the character. We hate it. It's more than annoying. All I can tell you is I can't tell you anything, because the Hobgoblin is now a mystery again.
Yes.
But that's the best thing about it. Now, Zeb Wells took a very uncomfortable situation about nobody being able to tell who it was, and then we always admitted who it was. He's got everybody on the hook, including me. Maybe because he hasn't decided himself.
Okay, so you don't know who the Hobgoblin is?
If I did, I couldn't tell you. And I'm a lousy liar.
Who else?
But thank you for that question. It's a good question.
All right,
but it's a
yes.
great storyline. That's Zeb Wells.
That's awesome.
Yes, sir.
Hi, big fan of you and your dad.
Thank you.
Especially the man without your.
Oh, God, yes.
What I was going to ask you was, who's a Spider-Man villain that you've never drawn, but you really like to draw?
Oh, that's a great question. Unfortunately, I'm an old man. I've drawn all of them, but that's beside the point. If I had, God,
Did you draw Mr. Fear? Isn't that negative? Or Mr. Negative. Mr. Negative, the Slack character.
Believe it or not, Mr. Negative is in as an ancillary character with Tombstone. He's at the table of all the crime lords in New York City. So I actually have drawn him, but not in a book. Okay. Dormammu, I've never drawn Dormammu.
I like it.
And I love Doctor Strange, so that's something to consider. But a Spider-Man character, I don't think there's a character I haven't drawn, even the villains. Oh, man. I can't think of any. That's a great question. You've stumped me.
I like it.
You've stumped me.
Didn't you?
Huh?
The Jackal.
I haven't drawn the Jackal. Okay, there you go. Excellent.
Good job. Absolutely.
Excellent question.
I loved when, was it Spider-Man 500, when you had Doctor Strange bring Uncle Ben back?
Yes.
Beautiful scene.
Yeah.
Beautiful
Always
scene.
had this great premise for Doctor Strange. I want to do that very badly.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
And by the way, for a writer that is older than you to collaborate with, and I keep waiting for this book with you and Shaken, the Brooklyn book, Shmuggy?
Shmuggy and Bimbo.
Bimbo and Shmuggy,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Two guys that grew up with my parents that are the Wolverine and Colossus of hitmen from the 40s. And these two guys actually existed. And my father said Shmuggy looked like a beat-up catcher's mitt, and he did look like. But his nickname was Shmuggy. His name was Sonny Santangelo. What would possess somebody? I think it was because he wanted to hide. That's all. So I came up. We used to hear stories about these two Gavones and at dinner, and all of my uncles worked with them, so to speak. But we used to hear stories about these two guys, and I came up with a premise about the two of them and approached Howard Chaykin about it, and we came up with this great story. Howard decided to take it out of the 40s and put it into the 70s, where we were the degenerates instead of my parents.
That works.
And if I tell you the whole story, it'll be a half hour. We'd all need to get drunk. It would be a great story.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no. Sometime we got to exchange New York
But the
mock
truth,
stories
what
and
happens
Chicago mock
is, through
stories.
experimental drugs by the mafia bosses, these two guys are 100 years old. But they're still functioning as hitmen. And the only guy that knows it is their capo, who's about 85, and he won't tell anybody.
That's awesome.
And the story proceeds from there. And I've never met either one of these two guys, but they actually lived, and all of their family members have since passed, so nobody can sue me, which is
Good.
I just want to remind you we're recording this, so it'd be nice if people use the microphone.
You know what? If I find a relative that comes after me for a bunch of money, I'm going to be coming after you guys.
Hey, John, obviously a big fan. I was in the experience, which was truly an awesome experience. And
You have more questions?
I got more questions. Even
That's
though I haven't
incredible.
had the time. One thing I didn't ask
Nothing about Cindy Timpanelli. I told you, don't bring her up.
was
It's a college flame, don't we?
the original storyline that had Aunt May passing away. It was a very poignant story, as you remember. And then, of course, obviously they brought her back. Do you think that lost some significance, that whole storyline? And would they have been better off maybe? Obviously,
I always have a problem with that kind of action, but if it's told properly, if it's written well, you can't argue with it. I don't know what the reaction was in the public. I was uncomfortable hearing about it, but if it's done well by the correct writer, you can't argue with it.
do you think they should have left her beyond the grave?
Honestly, am I going to get in trouble if I say this? Yes, I do.
You think they should?
I do.
Understood. Well, yeah. Story's got to move on. If everyone has questions, please, because I do want to help.
And anybody tells anybody else, I'm going to
guys,
deny it. You guys are all lying if I tell him.
So yeah, if you don't mind, absolutely, man. That's awesome. How was this DC, as we're getting people to come to the microphone, how was the DC run? Did you
I had a great time because I got a chance to work with some brilliant writers.
Yeah, you
Jeff
did.
Johns, I got to work with Frank again, and I got to work on Superman and Batman. I missed Wonder Woman, but
Yeah.
I found out that Superman had a red cape just like Thor. I said, I've done this before. This is not. It was all self-imposed intimidation and fear because I said, I'm suddenly making a lot of noise and people have to pay attention to it. And there was enough people that said, yeah, good, get out of Marvel, and no, we don't want you at DC. And I said, Mom, don't talk to me like that. Come on.
Sir.
But once you deal with the fact that you're doing the same job only with different costumes, and you work with great writers, how could you argue? It's better than having a real job. I was having a blast.
What keeps drawing you back to Spider-Man? Because I mean, you're John Romita Jr. You can say, well, I want to work on Doctor Strange now.
100%.
I want to work on Kazar. I want to
Yes.
do. And you can pick and choose whatever you want to do. What keeps drawing you back?
In casual conversation, even while I was with DC, I said, somebody said, what would you do if you went back to Marvel? I said, well, I'd love to do Spider-Man again, Daredevil, and everything else. I forgot which characters I mentioned. And the editor of the book heard that conversation and said, when I was told that I was going to be offered a contract, he called me and said, we'd like to have you and Scott back on Spider-Man, and we'll do this, this, and this. They got Zeb Wells. They didn't offer anything else. Maybe that was, now they did say you have a choice between the X-Men and Spider-Man, and I said, how about we do Spider-Man first, and then I'll get on the X-Men, I'll try it. And now that's doing well enough, and then they said, how about Daredevil? So there's suddenly things, but the sales on Spider-Man are strong, and they don't want to buck the system, and as long as the stories are this good, and that writer is Zeb, I'm really enjoying myself, I'm having a good time. I think I'll stick with this for now. But who knows what's going to happen next year? We'll see what happens. Now, if I hit the lottery, I'm going to go disappear to the Bahamas. Thank you. Great question.
I had another question. I don't know if you talked about this at all, but Joe Quesada is obviously leaving Marvel. How do you have any thoughts on that? And I guess what do you think is his legacy? I think ultimately, I think whether or not you agree or disagree with his decisions, I think obviously he played a big part in saving Marvel, and I also think he also was super just instrumental in just kind of getting Marvel to where it is.
I don't know how instrumental he was. He made some great choices. Yeah. I think he's a great artist, number one, and great talent. And he made some good decisions. Mm-hmm. So I think it was great where he was. Marvel treated him well. He treated Marvel well. Yeah. As far as why he's retiring, I don't know, and I'm hoping he's happy and did it for the right reasons. But I didn't get into any information out of that because I didn't want to stick my nose where it didn't belong. Mm-hmm. I know that when Marvel went under, so to speak, a lot of people lost the stocks and so on, and he was offered the job with new stock. Yep. And I wasn't, and that pissed me off. Really? Pissed me off end.
Wow, you're the J.
But a lot of people, he was given that incentive to work as the editor-in-chief, I think, at the time. And a lot of people lost more money than I did. It wasn't just me. And Marvel the new owners didn't want to do anything about it. Aside from that, I joke a little bit, but he made good moves, made smart decisions, and the company recovered. But the company was going to recover without him, honestly.
Definitely.
And he knows that. And he was fair in saying that. But I think he was a great talent, and I'm sorry to see him go.
Definitely. Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Man, interesting topic there. I like that.
All right, so I know Typhoid Mary is near and dear to your heart.
I'll tell you why I'm laughing in a minute.
Did you see the Netflix rendition of her in Iron Fist?
I did. Yeah, I did.
What did you think?
Doesn't look enough like my character, but it's still it's her. It's a good character. But I did the character back in the 80s. And the joke is that it's my ex-wife, which is actually true. Now listen, in fairness, Typhoid has a couple of more redeeming qualities, and I can't argue with... Andesenti asked me on the phone to create a character called Typhoid Mary, and my ex-wife came out of the bathroom at that time with a gigantic head of hair, shoulder pads, a vest, fishnet stockings, and gloves, everything except the machetes, which were probably in the closet somewhere, and I didn't know about it. But it was a perfect image of the 80s, and all I did was put a split down because it was a split personality character. I think it looked great. They turned it into a great character. It was already a good character and did a fantastic job on the character. Yeah. But now they've made her a much more versatile character. And was she married to the Kingpin now or something like that? Yeah. Is that true?
I don't.
It makes no sense to me. What does she see in him? I have no idea.
Two sick people, I guess. That's awesome. Fantastic.
Great question. Thank you.
That's really, real fast, I want to say, when Ann took over Daredevil from Frank.
Fantastic.
And that's the thing, man.
Writer.
Just like when Brad Meltzer took over Green Arrow, and everyone's like, oh, good luck. And Anna said, who the hell is this? Well, she's amazing. Good news.
And she played softball. She's a good softball player.
That's fantastic.
But she said to me when we were told we were going to be working on it, she said, listen, I want to hear your opinions. I want to know what you got. Let's hear some storylines. And we went out and got drunk, and I told her a story. I wrote a one-act play that I was going to try to pitch to Broadway about down on his luck guy sits at a bar, and God comes in, sits down next to him. And I didn't go any further than that. She says, we're doing Mephisto. Let's do Mephisto.
Outstanding.
So it was, instead of beer with God, it was beer with the devil. And Matt Murdock sits down at a bar because he's depressed, and Mephisto comes in looking like a beautiful brunette and makes out with him at a bar, and everybody sees it's Mephisto except Matt Murdock.
Oh my God, that's fantastic.
So she allowed me to do things that I hadn't been offered to do before. She's a brilliant, and I'm hoping we can do something again.
Hear, hear. That'd be great.
Hey, John, Mark Giannacchio, Amazing Spider Talk.
How you doing, Mark?
Hey, how you doing? Nice to see you again. I know you're a humble guy, but I'm going to put you on the spot.
I'm a hell of a cook, though.
There you go.
Don't roll your meatballs. I'm serious. Anybody that's a cook, do not do that with a meatball. Trust me. The lighter they are, the more they soak up the sauce and the more they disintegrate.
Yeah, you don't want to overknead them, right?
It's true, you don't?
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just couldn't get that out.
Oh, of course. What is it about your style that you feel is most distinct, and that when there is a day where sadly you're not doing this work anymore, that you will be most remembered for?
I don't ever think I had a style. It just is what came out on time. I call it deadline style. I made a joke about that a million years ago, and it's the truth. Because I was too conscious of paying the rent. And if it came out on time and I got paid, I was happy. And that's just the way it looked. I wasn't good enough an artist or draftsman to consciously adjust my style to what people wanted. At first I couldn't tell, and there was no internet when I started. So whatever came out on time, I was happy. And I feel that I've always been anxious to get better and better and better, so my style improves. It's just overall, I improved as I got older. You do something 12 hours a day for 40 years, and you're going to get better at it. But there's always somebody better, and I'm always striving to get better. I don't really have a style. I really don't. It's just whatever comes out on time. And still to this day, I feel the same way. But thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Spider-Man's up with a question.
Hi, how you doing? So, I don't know if you know, I'm Spider-Man. And specifically, this costume is from the video game Spider-Man on PC.
Yes.
And I just want to know, what do you think of it? Like, do you like the game? Have you heard of like
The difficulty of the symbol and the webbing is something that you just curse people at when you're working on it, but only when you're behind schedule.
Okay.
The costume is iconic, even with the change in the symbol. I'd prefer the smaller one because it doesn't allow the chest to look different. With the smaller one, the chest looks expansive even when he's a small, skinny kid. Yeah. But I'm not thrilled with the legs and the arms going behind his back and connecting all over the place. Right. But that's just a personal choice. I think the iconic shot is the iconic shot.
Nice, thank you.
Thank you.
Outstanding. Well, we have a young man that's coming up to the microphone who has a question.
Oh, shit.
It's Howard Mackey, everybody. Really long-time fan. I have a two-part question. One, is it true that when you were younger you wanted to be a meteorologist? And part two is, what is your favorite position to draw a hero, specifically Spider-Man, in?
I never wanted to be a meteorologist, but I wanted to be an astronaut. So
Sure.
if I got high enough, I could drop shit on your house.
Thank you, sir.
What was the second question?
What position on a cover in particular do you really like to? It ties into the first question.
I love putting a character on a rooftop in the rain. All right? Is that what you want?
Yes.
All right.
Johnny, that's truly, absolutely. The first image I ever saw of you drawing was Daredevil
All right,
in the
now,
rain.
in fairness to me, when I was a kid and there was nothing except the 3 networks and the movies on the weekends, and if it's raining, my father said, "Come here, kid, watch this movie." It was a Philip Marlowe, it was Humphrey Bogart with a hat and a collar, and it was raining all the time.
Absolutely.
Then as I got educated in art, it was French art, was film noir. It was something that I always admired about the mood. And I vowed to do every character I've ever drawn in the rain somewhere. And Howard apparently doesn't like it.
I love it.
And by the way, wait till you see what I'm doing in your book. There's no characters, it's just effing rain. We'll talk about that when we work on our next project together.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
And then the inkers, Klaus and Scott Hanna, they scream. I can hear them without the phone. They scream because it's a lot of details and all the... Although I haven't done a full book in the rain. I've only done a couple of pages and a lot of covers. Thank you, Howard, for being such a pain in the ass.
No, truly.
When is your panel next?
You missed
When
it.
is your... I missed your...
Yeah.
Crap.
The last one. Absolutely. Thoughts on Kick-Ass? And the franchise and everything?
I want to see a third movie so bad.
Me too, man. God,
Now, there's rumors.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'd like to see that. There's rumors about Hit Girl being approached. I personally like the new Kick-Ass lady to be approached as well because I like the character. But a hit girl is something that everybody's attracted to, and it would be an adult hit girl, and then it would be a younger sister, and something to that effect. I don't know. But I only hear rumors, and who knows if it's going to happen.
You know, and forgive me, this is my editorial comment. I was really disappointed in Jim Carrey kind of disowning the movie, and I even talked about that with Mark back in the day as well. And it's like, it's a great movie. And
anybody related to that person?
Yeah,
they're related. Strunz. If anybody Italian in this room, this is a guy that destroyed the
marketing of the movie
by single-handedly accepted his independent $7 million fee and then made a lot of noise about too much violence. Well, if he had turned, he's a multimillionaire. If he turned the money down, I would have shook his hand. What a piece of shit.
I'm with you. You know, and I was bummed because Roger Ebert was always a good friend to nerd movies. And he really was appalled by the first movie. And it's a great scene, and it's comedy, but it's also violent comedy in the best way. When Nick Cage shoots a little hit girl in the chest, and she's got the bulletproof vest, and even the kickback makes her like fall down. And he's like, "That's terrible. That's deplorable." It's like, it's satire. Relax. And that's my only fear about this current era, without getting into any of the culture wars. But there is this oversensitivity.
Yeah, of course. But having the little girl use the foul language that she did, that also took a lot of people by. But between the violence and the foul language, I asked, there's been no movies like that, but not a little girl cursing like that.
Well, yeah.
All right, so Matthew Vaughn insisted, and now listen, that particular word in England is not as horrible as it is here.
Yeah. And it's used all the time.
And the Brits just insisted on it. And listen, they also thought I was the only mafioso in the world that was working on a film. This is a true story. The producer, I can't remember his name, I'm blanking on his name, told the director, Matthew Vaughn, that he was afraid of me. This is the true story. Matthew Vaughn says, "Listen, come here." He's really, and he was about 9 feet tall, this guy, an elite, effete Brit. And Matthew Vaughn says to me, "He's afraid of you. He thinks you're connected." I said, "Oh, that's so stupid. You know, that's ridiculous." He said, "No, don't say a word to him. You'll get more things done if he thinks that way."
Good. Use it. Absolutely.
So I told Matthew, I said, "Well, if he doesn't do what I ask, I'll just rewire his car." And that's a true story. And then he put me in the film. I got a scene, and then they cut me out because they said, I swear to God, they said I wasn't authentic looking enough. I was the only guy from New York on the set, and I wasn't authentic enough. All right, okay, I'm getting out of the film industry. That's it.
Jesus. I've had several conversations with Mark over the years about his association with Matthew, so I'm assuming it was a good one with Matthew Vaughn.
Yeah, he was. He was good to us, yes. And I thought the first film was fun, and the second one not as much fun, but
still good enough.
Never forget that guy.
Yeah, I'm hip. No, I get it and everything. More questions, everybody? Anything? Sir, front row.
Who's your favorite writer to work with? Like everybody you work with.
Favorite writer?
So my favorite writer is Howard Mackey.
Because he's 3 rows by.
Now, if he had left like he should have left. I've got a lot of favorites. I've worked with some brilliant writers, and I couldn't pick and choose one, even if there was a gun in my head. But there's a list of great writers that I've worked with, and Howard is one of them. We had such great run, but there's been Neil Gaiman, and there's been Mark Miller, Frank Miller, and I've had Dan Slott. I've had great times with all of them. I worked with Stan on the last FF book. So I can't choose one. If I had to choose one, I don't think I could. But I've had a run of luck with great writers and great ink artists as well. I've been really lucky. Yes, sir.
Oh, please, yes. No. Go ahead. I want fan questions.
Any writers I'd like to work with? Yeah, there's Alan Moore. Let me tell you a story about Alan Moore with his long effing hair in my food in England when we were. Alan Moore's a brilliant writer. He's a pain in the ass, and he didn't like me because he thought I was a fan of a president, and he was wrong. It doesn't matter. Dropped his hair in my food at lunch, and he was doing this here with his hair.
Oh my God. That sucks.
Well, after telling him I was going to break his knees, we separated, and over the years, his brilliant writing makes me want to work with him to shut him the hell up, you know? Other than that, I can't think of anybody else.
Now, you mentioned working with Stan, and I assume, well, I don't know. When you were a kid, obviously Stan was referring to you as John's son and everything. Did the relationship change, and did he appreciate?
He always forgot my name. That's the funny part.
Get out of here.
Walk down the hall, and I'd pass him, and he'd say, "Good to see you, John. Oh yeah, that's right. I had a great time with him. He was just a character and a half. It's the truth. He was what you saw at conventions. That's the way he was in real life.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
That's lovely. And then any other, oh, I'm sorry, please, sir. Go ahead. Any lessons learned from working with Howard Mackey?
Have no ego.
Are there other old, like, classic Bullpen stories of you, like, being in the office that, you know, who were the characters in the Bullpen?
Oh, God. Giacoya, Mike Esposito, a lot of Goombas, if you know what I mean.
Mike Esposito, absolutely.
And Mike Esposito, there's also Vinny Coletta.
Yeah, any good Vinny? By the way, Vinny was a guy that everyone was afraid of.
He was that type of character. There was a lot of stories, and none of them could be told in public. But
Bummer.
Yeah, I don't want to piss anybody off.
Right.
Even if they're past, I don't want to say anything. But a lot of characters, and Howard knows this. They're just a lot of characters.
Sure.
And they all knew we were in a business that was fun, and there were very few people that took themselves too seriously. There were very few. But it was always a fun thing to go up to the office, even when you weren't on staff. Go up there to bring your pages up, and you end up going to either a softball game or going out for a couple of drinks. It was great. People are wonderful, and they're creative people, and it was wonderful. I had a great time. And then sometimes you would work with people that were on staff that you would go to see as editors, like Andesenti was one.
Yes.
And Howard was another, who were editors, and then you became their individual writers. So you got along famously with them, and they knew who you were, and just all wonderful people. And even my father's contemporaries, who derisively called me punk kid and junior, we all got along great because they would come to the house, and it was just great times with all of them. And I never met somebody I didn't like up at that office. It's the truth. They were all wonderful people.
How about Kirby? Any good Kirby stories?
Yeah, I'll give you a tiny microcosm of Jack Kirby. I was running into him in the office, and he had this, it looked like a cartoon. He had the cigar, and he had the butch hair, and I got introduced to him, and he says, "Oh, you're the kid, all right." He says, and I said, "Yeah." Well, at the time, he was doing 7 books a month. 7 books a month. So the story goes that everybody wanted to know how to get fast. I said, "Jack, what do I do to get fast?" "How many pages you do a day, kid?" I said, 1 page? Takes a puff, and he goes, "Pardon me for this. Throw away your fucking eraser." True story.
That's awesome.
True story. And I didn't throw it away, but I got his point. Is what he meant was what you do initially is generally the better thing.
Okay.
Don't second guess and third guess yourself. You drive yourself crazy. But his point was, don't overthink. And he was right. He was exactly right. I never got to 7 books a month, but and nobody will ever do that. But after speaking to him, I did get faster. In fact,
Okay. Now, you disparage your style, but I would say, again, I think you're a great storyteller. Have you ever done chalk talks to guide younger artists yourself and stuff? I mean, I know Klaus does
no,
it.
I've never.
I know Howard does it.
I've only done it with a project in mind instead of just general education. And every time it was something to that effect, it was storytelling.
Yes.
Because I'm a better storyteller than I'm a draftsman, and I've been asked by other artists for advice.
Sure.
But to young artists, it's always generalized storytelling business because it makes you a better artist if you're a good storyteller.
100%.
Pull back, show great. If there's a movie called The Big Country that I use as an example, is the fight is going on. Gregory Peck and Charlton Heston are beating the crap out of each other, and the director pulls back, and you can still hear the thud. But you saw the vista, and that is a microcosm of storytelling. You pull back, and interestingly enough, an editor-in-chief at Marvel insisted on establishing vistas and shots. His name was Jim Shooter. Now, we all knew how to tell it, but he said you got to do it every other page, every 2 pages to the top. You have to establish so you know where you are. And if you have to pull back, you pull back. And it makes you a better artist because you have to design, you have to build in the design to this on top of it.
Yeah.
And it made us all better artists. And those that didn't pay attention to that, it probably regressed.
This is the lost art of the new artists. Some do it great, but truly storytelling, and that's great to hear because, yeah, I do think that really makes a difference from the flash in the pan to a guy or woman who has a career doing it. More questions? Sir, white shirt.
How did your father get fixed to replace Ditko on Spider-Man?
I think just because his relationship with Stan before, was it Titan? Titan was the name of the original company, right?
Timely.
Timely, I'm sorry.
All
not
good.
Titan.
All good.
They worked together back then, and then when Stan started Marvel up, he called back his favorites, and my father was one of them. As far as why he chose him for Spider-Man, I don't know. I just know that he did Beautiful People in romance. He had done Daredevil, yes, but he had done a lot of romance comics, and Stan loved the beautiful women and he thought that Ditko's style was a little bit less attractive than he wanted. Even though it's brilliant and iconic, he wanted my father's style. And interestingly enough, he told my father, don't lose any of that craziness and that awkwardness of the character, which is what Ditko was known for.
That's awesome. Sir.
I don't think I asked you this before about the Amazing Spider-Man 3940. Did your father assume, like, do those covers, they're so iconic.
Sure.
3940, do they hold like a special place? It was hard to, would he talk about them in number 50 as well? You know,
That was the one that he was most lauded for, was Spider-Man No More.
Yes.
But he never said anything to the effect of, this is my favorite piece. It was a job to him. He didn't care. He didn't care as much as you might imagine. But that cover, because he was told it was and he designed it, was his idea. He was told it was also voted the best Spider-Man cover of all time, that kind of thing.
Good
He
Lord,
took great
yes.
pride in that.
There's a reason why it's in the first Sam Raimi movie, or the second one, whatever it was, where he ditches the costume.
Right.
John, am I right? And I believe you've told me this before, and I want the people, if they haven't heard this story yet, that there were car trips of Dad driving and you guys in the back, and he would really kind of map out the Spider-Man story?
He would go up with Stan, and Stan would give him a visual plot. And an audio plot, an oral plot. And my father would sit there, write notes. Stan would stand on the top of the desk and jump off and so on. And we would head to Connecticut, in Hartford, where my grandparents had moved to, and it's a 2.5-hour drive. And in the car, because the reception was lousy on the radio, he would sit there and he would start bouncing things off of all three of us. My mother couldn't be bothered with it, but my brother and I, ironically, she didn't give a damn back then, but my brother and I my brother would fall asleep, so my father and I had these conversations.
That's awesome.
And it was innocent in what we said, but every once in a while he would, that's not a bad idea, and he would jump off from a different tangent.
Beautiful.
But yeah, we had great conversations. We would drive out of the city and pass by a building in Queens, and he'd say, "That's where Peter Parker lives."
Yes.
Oh, wow, Spider-Man lives in New York City. Well, that's fantastic. And that's the conversation would go, and we weren't bored for 2.5 hours.
I hear you, man. There was the Travel Channel did Marvel's New York, and it is so fantastic. And they pointed out the real buildings that represent Avengers Mansion, or the Baxter Building and stuff like that. No, and really that is. And even living in Chicago, I'm like, this is great, because this is so much more real than Gotham or Metropolis, and I love those cities.
And there is one of the qualities that Stan instilled in these books was the antithesis of DC, who did Metropolis and Gotham. Why they didn't just call it New York City, I don't know. But Stan made sure it was centric to the city and clear. And we had to draw buildings that were obviously New York City buildings. Listen, Spider-Man is derivative of the Superman image, but it's just the polar opposite. It's a kid that got beat up all the time. And Superman was perfect, but Peter Parker wasn't. He had an aunt that doted on him and that kind of thing. But he wanted to make sure it was legitimate, and you were in New York, and we all had to get reference on New York. Books, magazines, we were tearing things apart. And I think that was the fun part of it. And I'd use the building, I'd use my apartment. It was just so much fun because, hey, this is almost real, except for the fact there's a superhero involved. But that's what Stan wanted, and it was brilliant.
That's awesome. I love that. Who else? Sir.
Character that's challenging is Aunt May. She's a pain in the ass to draw. Come on. Jack of Hearts. Don't ever ask me to draw Jack of Hearts.
That's hilarious.
Who created that character, Howard? I'm going to find his mother and shoot her.
And that goes back to the Marvel black and whites.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's just the complexity of a costume. But the challenging characters, wow. I don't know. Maybe because I've been doing it long enough that I got used to some of them. But there's so many characters that are difficult. It's got to be characters difficult to write as well. But if I had to choose one that's difficult to draw, it's the characters that are the plain characters, the human characters. Oh. You can't draw anything that's outstanding about them. And they have to look exactly the same. Aunt May. And she doesn't look the same panel to panel, let alone. And now she's a much younger looking woman, so to speak, because of the filming.
Well, sure. Yes. Yeah. But Ben Urich and everything, like another difficulty or whatever,
Only because you have to be spot on every single time. And it has to look just like them every single time. Although the costumes on the characters have to be correct every time too. But if I get reference on costumes from a character that's been done by somebody else, and panel to panel is a different costume, and I want to call and scream at the guy, I have to ask the editor which one. Choose the one in the middle. He said, "That's the costume."
Anyway, another. I got more if you don't, sir.
I'm sorry, you have to repeat that again. I couldn't hear you.
The Prowler is your first character.
Prowler was my first character just by luck. I just did a doodle on a piece of paper of a guy in a skin-tight costume and wrote the Prowler on it. And my mother said, "John, you got to take it into Stan. Your son is so proud." He took it in, and Stan said, "I don't like the artwork, but I like the name." And it was in a book a month later. And I got credit for it at 13, and that's something that I'm still very proud of.
How about more Virginia stories in the office and stuff? Please, come on, man. Your mom and dad are there.
She got credit for the schedule being brought back to
a regular
on time.
Okay, good.
And they called it the Virginia schedule.
Nice.
But some of them are too foul to bring up. But this little Sicilian woman who, other than a high school education, turned the office into an efficient office as the production manager. She's a tough old lady. She was a tough young lady at the time, too. And she's just 5'0", and everybody was afraid of her. Not because of my father, maybe because she's Sicilian and she could rewire cars, I guess. I'll give you a microcosm of this woman.
Yeah.
I had 8 pages due on a Monday. And Monday rolls around, and I had a horrible head cold, and I sounded awful. And she calls and says, "This is your production manager," or the time traffic manager. "This is your traffic manager. Where are the 8 pages? You're supposed to be in the office right now." And I said, stupidly, "Ma, I'm not feeling," and I had a head cold. She said, "Don't call me your mother. Get me those 8 pages. They got to be in by Wednesday at the latest." I said, "I promise I'll get them into you by Wednesday." I hang up the phone. 30 seconds later, she calls up and says, "Hello, this is your mother. Are you okay?" That's her. That's that woman. But she's tough as nails, and she still is tough as nails.
That's excellent.
And she could probably run a company by herself right now.
I'm pulling up more bullpen names. Flo Steinberg. Any good Flo stories?
God, I don't remember much about
Adorable.
Flo. Just a great office lady, and just had the heaviest New York accent you've ever heard in your life.
I have heard it. I am aware of that. That's awesome.
So did Mary Murphy, I think, the same way.
Oh,
Nancy Murphy, not Miriam.
Nancy Murphy. Excuse me.
They were from Brooklyn and the heaviest accents. "Good morning. How are you?"
More? Because I got more. If not, I know we only have a couple more minutes. Please. All right, sir.
Can you stand up?
Yeah, you got to speak up, buddy. I'm sorry.
Be louder.
5 minutes. Okay.
So yeah, what's the difference between illustrating in like the Marvel universe versus the DC universe? Like you mentioned, like different like fictional cities, like Gotham. What do you think?
I honestly wasn't conscious of trying to make Metropolis and Gotham look like themselves. They were generalized cities, a Gotham and a Metropolis. And nobody complained that I made them look too New York-ish, because that's what they were. So I didn't have any problems with that. I made everybody look like I was in the middle of a Marvel book, and nobody complained because there is a commonality. Real people, and the crowds had to look like real people in Times Square, that kind of thing. So I didn't have much of a struggle with that. Just the costumes of the heroes, and that's it. It was pretty much it.
That's beautiful. You know, honestly, I want to give people a chance to come in, because we got Garth Ennis coming up. I will wrap it here if there are no other questions. Just say, John, way to go. We're glad you're back at Marvel. It's always great. You're still an incredible, vital voice in comics, and I'm so glad you're there, and I'm so glad you always talk to me.
Thank you very much. I appreciate
you
that.
Know
Thank
that.
you. Thank you. Thank you very much. You guys are great.